Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another reaction video. In today's video, we are going to look at a video by Mr. Beats. Now, this is an old video, but it was recommended on my Discord. Please go ahead and join my Discord as well. Look down in the description below. And this is about the 2000 election. Now, Mr. Beats, friend of at least my other channels, great guy, as I mentioned, really nice guy. I met with him a few weeks ago. Actually, we were in Kansas and talked about our channels and everything. Great guy. He focuses, especially in his early YouTube career, a lot on the Supreme Court. So I don't know if he's going to be more into the Supreme Court in this case, or talk about the overall election in general, talk about Florida. So we're going to go ahead and look at that. And personally, me, while I wasn't involved with the election in Florida, I lived in Florida at the time. It was like a period where I removed myself from Democratic politics. But I do know a lot of people very close to the situation, and I know the story very well. So we'll see if Matt actually gets it right. So let's go ahead and jump into the video.
Mr. Beat presents Supreme Court Briefs. Florida, November 8th, 2000. In one of the closest presidential elections in American history, George W. Bush held a narrow lead over Al Gore. Out of nearly 6 million ballots in Florida, only 1,784 votes separated the two. Under Florida law, and since the United States has a winner-takes-all system, the candidate with the most votes in the state got all of its electoral votes. Because it was so freaking close, state law said there has to be a machine vote recount. After the recount, it was even closer. Now Bush's lead was just 327. No worries. Florida law also allowed Gore the option of a manual vote recount, meaning counting them by hand in whatever counties Gore wanted. He was like,
and this is where it's going to be interesting, because he picked counties that were the most Democratic counties. Honestly, if they had done a hand recount of the whole state, Gore could have possibly won. I don't know, but Gore could have possibly won this election. And my personal opinion is, of the people who turned out to vote in Florida on election day in 2000, which I was one of them, most of the people intended to vote for Gore. There's the whole votes for Buchanan thing in Palm Beach County. I don't know if Matt's going to get into that, but basically, the way that it was aligned, people thought they were voting for Gore, but they actually voted for Pat Buchanan. And if you look at Buchanan's results in Palm Beach County compared to the other ones, you can see that it's very much lopsided. And that would have been enough for Gore to have won the election.
yeah, and picked 4 counties: Broward, Miami-Dade, Volusia, and Palm Beach. The problem, though, was that Gore was running out of time. Florida law also said, man, Florida law says a lot, the state's election results have to be certified within 7 days of the election. Since election day was November 7th, that meant the deadline was November 14th. Well, 3 of those 4 counties didn't get her done before the deadline. Despite those counties trying to get an extension, the Florida Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, went ahead and announced she would be certifying the votes, ending all the recounts. Al Gore was like, nuh-uh. He and Palm Beach County tried to get an injunction against Secretary Harris to prevent her from certifying the votes until those 3...
Yeah, because it was actually Palm Beach, I think, that did the injunction first, and then the Gore campaign, went with them and did it. So they were like, listen, we have a hand recount. We can't finish it. We want to have a court injunction to be able to finish this hand recount. And she was just like, stop count. This is what Florida law says. And there was a situation, and if you haven't seen the movie Recount yet, highly recommend it. One of the most accurate historical videos or movies I've seen on this. It's basically the reason why I don't do a video about the 2000 election on my history channel, because Recount, I just tell people go watch Recount. in that situation, Catherine Harris just was like, give me a reason why I should let you count. She's going to get the reason. She's just going to automatically say no and certify the results. That's what happened.
3 counties got their recounts done. The Florida Supreme Court said sure and granted the injunction on November 17th. On November 21st, it ruled that Secretary Harris had to let those counties finish recounting with a new deadline of November 26th. But Miami-Dade County was like, nah, man, that's not enough time, and it gave up counting. Gore said, hey, Miami-Dade, you must count, and try to get another court.
Well, I don't know if he's going to talk about it. There was something that happened in Miami-Dade, and a lot of people might remember at the time. There are a bunch of like big, like kind of fraternity bro type of people banging on the doors of the elections office. And this is also documented in the movie Recount, and basically trying to disrupt the actual counting. There was a threat. They felt like the people counting felt like there was a threat. So they went ahead and stopped the counting based on that threat for all intents and purposes. So that is a big part of the story as to why that counting was stopped.
Order to force them, but that one failed. On November 26th, Harris certified the election, giving Bush what was now just a 537 vote victory. You know what? Gore sued Harris, arguing the certified results were invalid because the recount process wasn't finished yet. The Leon County Circuit dismissed his lawsuit, so Gore appealed to the Florida Supreme Court, which on December 8th ruled in favor of Gore.
They ruled really well for Gore. Okay. Gore was only asking for like the certain counties to be recounted. But they're just like, no, we're going to do a hand recount of the whole state.
Demanded that all votes not counted by voting machines had to be manually recounted if they hadn't been already. Well, George W. Bush stepped in and said, hey, now wait just a minute, and appealed this decision to the United States Supreme Court. And holy crap, the very next day, the Supreme Court reviewed the case. Why did the Supreme Court respond quicker than it ever does? Well, this was obviously important. Soon, the deadline for electors to formally submit their choice would be there. And soon after, the new president would have to be inaugurated. Things needed to move along. The court heard oral arguments on December 11th. Through all of this, protesters lined the streets outside. Rarely throughout American history did the country seem so divided. Things were tense, to say the least. So what was the court really looking at in this case? Well, the issue now is whether or not the Florida Supreme Court violated Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution, specifically the part that says, quote, each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors, unquote. So could the Florida Supreme Court really step in on this? Also, Bush argued that the recounts went against the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th.
And that was the main argument, the Equal Protection Clause argument, which was a bullshit argument. Like, their argument was essentially that votes counted in one county are being held to a different standard than votes counted in another. This was especially with like the punch ballots, right? So if somebody punched the ballot and it went through or it didn't go through, you had these dimples. You might have remembered hearing about the dimples. Some counties were counting the dimples as a vote for a candidate. Some counties weren't. And so the Bush campaign was saying this is a violation of equal protection because one vote in one county is being counted differently than a vote in another county, right? But what's weird is that votes that were going for Bush were also the same way. There are a bunch of overseas ballots that literally came in with no postmark, no signature, nothing, like nothing. And yet they were able to count those in there as well. So they were only wanting to stop votes that were really going for Gore. though they were all for getting those votes that were coming in that were the overseas votes that had no verification whatsoever coming in to help Bush. But at this time, remember, they wanted to stop the count. They were up 537 votes. They didn't want this to go any further. So they actually started doing the hand recount statewide. Okay. And then the Supreme Court issued a stay because of this case. And then essentially, Matt will talk about it here, I'm sure.
14th Amendment, since Florida didn't have a statewide standard for recounting votes. Each county did it its own way. In response, Gore argued the, quote, intent of the voter standard, or standard that let you know who a voter meant to vote for in case there were anomalies on the ballot, was the standard needed for the Equal Protection Clause. Also, if Florida's standard wasn't good enough, certainly other states' standards would also go against the Equal Protection Clause. Well, the court didn't see it Gore's way. On December 12th,
okay, so the one that the standard that the Gore campaign used in the Supreme Court with the Supreme Court was the standard in Texas, which was a standard that was signed into law by George W. Bush when he was governor.
2000, they announced they had sided with Bush. It was 7-2, which means Bush got Florida's electoral votes, sealing his victory. The court said the Florida Supreme Court's recount order went against the Constitution because it indeed went against the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. They basically said their recount gave special treatment to some ballots over others. So,
and this is where I do believe two things. One, had Gore asked for a full recount, then I think that it would have been a little bit more legitimate. I think that they lost their opportunity when they only asked for the 3 in the South and Volusia, right? Palm Beach, Broward, Dade County. I think that's where they lost it. But the second thing is that the Supreme Court said that the ruling in Bush v. Gore cannot be used as precedent in other cases that might be something similar to this. That Bush v. Gore counts once and that's it. I mean, that's insane.
Bush, not Gore, would serve the next 8 years as the country's 43rd president. Because of the unpopularity of George W. Bush as president in later years, Bush v. Gore ultimately became a controversial case. Again, you heard cries of judicial activism, and critics often point out how the justices who normally supported federalism and states' rights all of a sudden ignored that for this case. One of the two people on the court who dissented was Justice John Paul Stevens. In his dissent, he said, quote, although we may never know with complete certainty the identity of the winner of this year's presidential election, the identity of the loser is perfectly clear. It is the nation's confidence in the judge as an impartial guardian of the rule of law, unquote. Oh boy, Justice Stevens, what a burn. What a burn. I'll see you for the next Supreme Court.
All right, so that was a short one today, just looking at Matt's video on this. Everything he said was correct in it. There was nothing that was wrong. Of course, it's a 6-minute video, and it's the Supreme Court brief, so it's just a little overview of it. Yeah, he said everything and made a good point of it all. I do recommend, CNN had a special, watch it, but the movie recount, definitely watch it. It really does go into detail. And from what I know and people who I know who worked in the recount, it's very accurate. So go ahead and check that out. So good job, Matt. Good video. Everything he said was correct in it. So that's great. All right. Well, I'll see you in the next video. Make sure to join my Patreon and have a great day wherever it is you are. Okay. Bye-bye.